Hello and welcome to the Man of Legacy podcast. This is episode number 7. I'm your host, Coach Dennis. Here we talk about men, women, families, sex, masculinity, and life in general. Today's guest is Coach Jeff Allen from Great Men Move Mountains and one of my fellow coaches with Steve and Dan at Good Guys to Great Men. Welcome, Jeff. How are you doing today?
Hey, Dennis, I'm phenomenal. I'm excited for our topic today.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. You and I have discussed when working with the guys that we coach the 4 phases of coaching and how the journey, they're really very distinct stages. And you have to go through one before you get to the other. It's not a quick fix. And those 4 phases are stop, grow, ask, and go deep. And today we're going to talk about phase 1, stop making huge mistakes, the bad habits guys have that cause them a lot of grief. And let's kick it off. Jeff, what do you see as the 3 biggest mistakes guys do?
Yeah, these are the first things, Dennis, that you and I coach men that they need to start right away or stop doing right away. The 3 things are being a hummingbird, not understanding things from her perspective, and knowing how to control your state, how to manage your stress and your emotions and your responses in the moment. Those are by far the 3 biggest mistakes and the things that men need to understand how to get a hold of right away.
Yeah, the hummingbird, that neediness, that hovering, it acts as a repellent with the women. You know, it just doesn't help the situation.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the asking her, how are you feeling today about the relationship? And I'd like to sit down again and talk more about the relationship. And, do you love me? Are you in love with me?
Are
Those
we
questions.
okay?
Yeah, are you okay? Those questions are only going to make her feel more pressure about the situation. And we'll get into, it took a long time for her to come to this place. And so now just asking her logical questions, peppering her with annoying, continual questions, and it's going to come across as nagging and pressure and tremendous insecurity on your part.
Well, I know from talking to some of my female friends, when they talk about their husband's behavior like this, they see it as pathetic. The tone in their voice, the lack of respect because of the way they're acting is so obvious that you would think that the men are just not seeing it in the body language.
Well, I was in this place 5 years ago, Dennis. I didn't understand these things. I had to learn this all from scratch. I mean, where the hell do we learn this today unless our father was an amazing, advanced, mature guy? And my dad wasn't that guy. I mean, he put food on the table and was a great provider, but he didn't talk with me about relationship. And even then, how did he know how to have modern relationship? It's just something that we don't learn today as guys. So when our woman comes to us and she says, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, or I need space, or I'm not sure about us, or even something as serious as an affair or her already wanting separation, we're taken off guard. I was 5 years ago. And when she said, I don't think this is working. I don't feel the same about you. I felt like I had been fucking shoved off of a cliff and was falling and in free fall this whole time. And so it was like clawing at the side of the cliff, trying to grab, one of the tree saplings that are hanging off the side of the cliff by asking these hummingbird, annoying, nagging questions that there's really no good answer to. She doesn't know how to tell you what's going on with her necessarily. And we'll get into that in the next mistake.
Well, and I think what a lot of guys, what you just said, what I've experienced, and a lot of the guys, is we think, well, we were faithful, we provided, we're being a good dad, and that's all that we need to do. And that makes us a good husband. And that doesn't even come close.
Yeah, how could she do this? I'm a good guy. She wants to break up the family. Doesn't seem like she cares.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we want to ask those questions because we want logical answers. Like, tell me what's wrong so I can fix it. That's the guy's point of view. That's like the male brain. We're good at that, right? Just tell me where the problem is and I'll attack the problem.
I remember to this day when the divorce discussion happened. I said, "Tell me what I need to do to fix this." That is an exact verbatim quote, and
Yeah.
it was
What
like
did she say?
she didn't have an answer because she was done.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a good point. You had the hummingbird behavior. We've got to start, and again, it goes to lack of confidence. You know, that they use the women for their validation instead of any self validation. And if she's having a bad day or they're just trying to make her happy, they end up really hurting themselves in the long run.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And not understanding that, and women either, number one, don't know how to tell us these things, or they don't want to tell us and be our mommy. They don't want to teach us how to be a man. They want us to figure this out on our own, which which seems crazy, right? Like, you actually know, but you don't want to tell me. Well, yeah, because it takes you out of the intimate partner role. They want to feel depth of emotion with a man. They want to feel secure with a man. They want to be able to be intimate with an adult masculine dude. They don't want to have to train him how to be that man.
Well, and nobody's trained us is the problem. Like you said,
Yeah.
you know, my dad was the same way. Great man, didn't teach me shit about relationships, you know, with women. Probably from observation, I learned some negative traits. You know, it's not a knock on him. You do the best with what you have. So, yeah, until you start doing a little digging in and research, or you find a group of men like the ones we're a part of, it's hard because no one's ever told us. And yeah, it seems weird, but they want you to step up and figure it out. They want you to lead. You know.
Exactly. That reminds me, I just had a call this morning before we started recording our podcast here, Dennis. And how do we look at the challenge we're facing now? We wouldn't be seeking help had we not come across this adversity and this challenge. So how do we look at her coming to us and saying, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you"? We can look at that as a little boy and throw a tantrum and, "How could you do this?" And, "Oh my God," and, "I'm doing all these things and this is so unfair." Or we can look at this like, this is an awakening for me as a man. This has given me the reason to go seek help from other men that know what's going on, for me to learn how to be within modern relationship. I mean, hell, Dennis, there's only been modern relationships since the 1950s. And I looked it up the other day, and we've been Homo sapiens for 200,000 years. And early humans started using tools 2.5 million years ago. And it's only been, 60 years since the advent and development of modern relationship. So how were we supposed to know this? So we can look at this challenge as, it's time for me to awaken to be a modern man and know how to dance within modern relationship.
And that growth takes you on a path of a wonderful life. And the guys, and we all know them, who blame the woman, don't accept any responsibility. That bitch, how could she do that? And get all negative like that, will repeat the same cycle in every relationship at some point because they haven't looked inside themselves to see where can they improve.
That's right. So let's do that to lead. Let's take that to lead into the second big mistake that we're going to talk about today, which is not understanding things from her perspective. Right. So talk about, how did we get here, Dennis?
Well, and you and I know it didn't happen in the last week or two. This has been building up for close to 2 years, typically. You know, Steve talks about the 2-year time bomb. And honestly, she's hurt. She's lost. And she actually feels bad about this. So when she comes to you at that point and says, you know, I need space, I want a separation, it took a lot of courage and a lot of buildup to get to that point. And it's something I think a lot of guys don't realize or acknowledge when it happens.
That's right. I love how you said that she feels bad about it. She feels guilty for not being fully passionately in love with you at this point. She does blame herself for a lot of what's going on, whether she verbalizes that to you or not. But then what happens is over the last 2 years, like you've said, she's been disappointed, she's been frustrated, and she started to steel herself and create more and more emotional armor around herself to cover the pains that she's had and the unfulfilled needs that she's had. And one thing I share with men when I do coaching with them is that women have a covert contract that they're not even aware of. And that's that they want to be led, nurtured, and protected. They want the man to lead, nurture, and protect himself, her, and the relationship. So if you haven't been leading, nurturing, and protecting yourself and the relationship and her when she needs it, she'll feel like that's an abandonment. She'll feel like you haven't been following through on your responsibilities as a man. Now, nowhere is this written except in our stuff, Dennis, and other places in men's work, that she even has this covert contract. She doesn't know how to explain that to you. And again, even if she did know, she doesn't want to teach it to you.
And when you're not living up to that contract, what her needs to lead, nurture, and protect, I think when you look back, you see there's more distance. Obviously, the sex drops off, frequency and the passion of it. And there's a lot of signs, and a lot of guys just figure, well, it's just a phase, or that's just the way it is because we've been married 10 years, 15 years, 17 years, whatever it may be. They don't look deeper in that area. They just kind of figure that's just the way it is.
Yeah, with me, either I'd gotten super busy at work, or, and this is 5 years ago now at this point, and in 2015, super busy at work, disconnected. She just basically started to close down and was less intimate with me, going out more with her friends. And she didn't know how to bring this up to me. And I think that she was afraid to bring up some of these things as well, because I didn't have state control. I wasn't in control of my emotions like I am now. I wasn't aware of these dynamics. And that's why we'll talk more about the third big thing to stop, the third mistake about state control. But yeah, Dennis, I know you went through a similar situation with your wife.
Well, it's maybe 15 years ago now, getting close to that. I I hate to use this example, but I share it with the guys I coach, and it's the way I roll. The reason I do this is because I've made every mistake. I asked my wife to go to counseling because I knew something wasn't right. And you think about how many guys do that. It's a small percentage, but I knew something wasn't right. I asked to go to counseling, and she said, "We don't need to go to counseling. We're fine." And inside, I did backflips
Yeah,
because I don't have to go to counseling. Everything's fine. And you and I both know if a woman says it's fine, what does that mean?
it's not fine.
It's not fine. But I was that dumb back then. And literally, almost 2 years to the day, the I want a divorce conversation came up. And I didn't know what I didn't know. But as I look back now, I go, I had the opportunity and I blew it. I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't do anything. And that's what's so wonderful about the guys that we're working with is they're part of that. I call them the top 5% because they're taking action to figure out what they need to do for themselves. And that's what a lot of them don't even understand that at first. It's about working on doing this work for yourself first and foremost.
Absolutely. Yeah. The men that come to us are mature and aware, and they want to know how to be good in relationship, and they want to know how to be better men. It's easy just to say, fuck her, that bitch, and move on and start a new relationship. And guess what? The same pattern is going to happen in that next relationship. Yeah, sure. It feels great during the honeymoon phase for the first year or so because of all the hormones that are running through both of your body. But if you want to have connected, intimate, passionate, long-term relationship, you need to start with this work on your own. You need to understand things from her perspective and what she wants in a relationship. And you have to understand how to control your emotions.
Well, and that's number three, state control, managing your frame. And it's also managing your stress, your anxiety, your frustration and disappointment, so that if you're annoyed, it doesn't leap out on your face, you know. And in this stage, when you do, you know, don't do that, we see more arguing. You have no empathy for her. You start speaking in anger. And when you do that, you can't take back those words. Once they leave your mouth, she's going to remember them forever. And sometimes that's not something that can be overcome, because really you start acting like a little boy throwing a temper tantrum sometimes because you're not getting what you want and you're unhappy. So, what's the key here? Because I know you do a great job in this area when it comes to state control.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. The very first thing is you have to understand what your body feels like when you're having those emotions, when you're about to throw a quote little boy tantrum, or when you're getting angry, or you're frustrated, or you're shutting down, or you're having anxiety. I mean, for me, when I did a men's retreat in the summer of 2016, and Steve Horseman from Good Guys to Great Men asked, what's the number one thing you don't want us to know about you? Share the number one thing that you are ashamed to basically share with us. I thought about it for a moment. We were up on the top of a mountain overlooking miles of beautiful Colorado trees, pine trees, and the beautiful sky. And I took a big breath and I said, I have the Hulk inside of me. You know, I keep him at bay as long as I can. I just was at that time, prior to that, was trying to do happy wife, happy life in my, you know, I was divorced at that time, but learning to understand myself, finally, which was I have the Hulk inside me. And what happens is energy shoots up my back and up my neck, and then my head gets tight. And I realized that when that happens to me, I must breathe deeply into my belly. I must control my own emotions, if you will. I must get my body in line and breathe deep and lower my pulse before I try to speak. And if I'm not able to do that in the moment, I got to take some kind of break. I have to excuse myself to the bathroom, splash water in my face, take a big breath, maybe say something into my own reflection in the mirror, you know, like, you can handle this. You can handle this. You're in no danger. Everything's fine. You can handle this. And then go back and have a calm discussion about something. Or if I'm not able to calm myself down, I teach men this now as well. You can say, thank you for bringing that up. I'd really love to think about that and feel into that more. So I'm going to take a break now and I'll bring it up again in the near future.
And the key thing with that is it's a man's responsibility if they say, hey, I want to bring that up. We'll talk about it in the future, because you know you're not in the right state. You must bring it back up in a reasonable time frame so that she can learn to trust that you're not just avoiding the discussion. Because if she thinks you're avoiding the discussion, you're a dead man, you know?
That's exactly right. I was coaching a man out of Portugal. His name's Eduardo. He's from Portugal. He met an American in Switzerland. And when I met him, they had a 3-year-old daughter together, and he was completely disconnected from his own goals in life, his own wants in life, and his spirituality. He was living in Switzerland. He wasn't by the beach and able to kite surf like he normally was. He had a great job. He worked with Doctors Without Borders. She was a businesswoman, but they had been just fighting ferociously. And when I met him, he was doing everything under the sun, all the mistakes as far as hummingbird questions. Where are we? How do we feel about things now? Completely not understanding where she's coming from, and out of his mind as far as state control, to the point where, you know, they're having screaming fights, and it was certainly not helping anything. And 3 months later, he got back in touch with his spiritual roots in Portugal, meaning he knew how to source himself and validate himself emotionally and spiritually, so that he wasn't trying to get his wife to fill that void for him. And when she wasn't filling it for him in a healthy way, he'd basically start a fight to try to get her to interact with him and fill it in an unhealthy way. So 3 months later, he's kite surfing back on the beach. She's flying in with their daughter to visit him in Portugal, having sex again. And he last time I talked to them, he said, Jeff, this is incredible. She's doing things that she never did before. And I'm not even asking. I'm pinching myself that this is going so well. What's going on here? Those are the types of things I hear from men all the time.
Well, and when you take away, when you have that calm confidence about you and the anger's gone and the hummingbird's gone, you become a very attractive man. That's the guy she most likely fell in love with because that's how he was when they met most of the time. And we just get out of sorts. I always talk about the biggest mistake we make is we stop dating our wives, and so we lose that fun flirtiness and all. And, when you start adding in anger instead to go with the frustration because you can't control your state, it's a bad combination. Yeah, and we see it turn around all the time. I have a client just finished a coaching package with me, and the biggest takeaway from the last call that gave me just put a smile on my face was his comment, I can't recall the last time I was angry.
Wow.
And anger was his biggest issue for most of his life. And I can tell you with my first marriage, especially once there were issues, I was a pretty angry guy. And I don't get angry now. And life is so much better because anger clouds everything and it poisons everything. And I
That's a
don't
good
think guys
point.
realize how damaging it is.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that these troubles and this anxiety and stress and uncertainty and insecurity can leak into all other areas of our life. That's what it was like for me. Hell, when I went to work and I was in the middle of this turmoil and feeling like I was in free fall and just waiting for my face to smash into the ground in my relationship, I couldn't concentrate at work. It was affecting every other area of my life, including my ability to be a good father. And so, yeah, getting a handle on this is vital to everything in a guy's life. And so they can have the passionate relationships that they want, whether it's with your current woman or whether it's with the next woman in your life.
Well, and what I typically find, and tell me if you see this too with the guys you work with and coach, not only do the relationships at home improve, that their work relationships improve, their performance improves, and their relationships with their children improve dramatically as well.
Oh, incredibly. So there's no question. I don't think any guy listening to this questions that this is a great thing. And that's what you're saying, Dennis, of course. And I agree with you. It's really to the point of how much one-on-one help does a guy want? What other kind of guy friends, what other guy friends do you have in your life? I didn't keep up my guy friends. And so when I was having trouble in my relationship, I didn't really have anyone to speak to about this. I basically made her my best friend. And as soon as you have a fight or something with her, then you have no one you can go and talk to. So do you have other guy friends? Do you want to be within some kind of group coaching scenario? Do you want to be on a forum with other guys online? Do you meet other friends in your town? Are you reading books? There's everything from free watching YouTube videos, buy an $11 book, buy a $9 audio book. That's all great. Get together with friends, or do they want more one-on-one help or to connect with other guys on a forum from all over the country that are doing the same work? So yeah, absolutely. This will increase every area of your life. No question.
And this isn't do it and you're done. This is something you're going to need to work on and practice your whole life. If you don't get a handle on it, like we talked about, you're going to see it repeat in every relationship. So this is part of a journey.
Well, yeah, Esther Perel, you pronounce her name, talks in Mating in Captivity and in her book and in her TED Talks and such about how modern relationship is completely different than it's ever been. The notion of modern love and relationship fulfilling that love and passion side of you and your want is only about 200 years old. And like I mentioned, modern relationship is only about 60 years old. And so when a woman really only, quote, needs a man for love, desire, and sex and passion, and she doesn't, quote, need him for anything else, we have to be very skilled in the dance of modern relationship. She wants a man to be emotionally strong, to be able to be the rock within her emotional storms, be the lighthouse in the storm, as we always say. And our grounding of our own self needs to run very deep. So I give a quick analogy to this of if I'm standing on a beach and the tide is coming in and out, at some point it's going to blow me down, wash me, wash me to and fro. I'll be wet at one time and I'll be dry at another time. But if we're as deep as the middle of the ocean, yes, there's waves, but we're not abandoning ourselves, or she's not abandoning us emotionally when the tide goes in and out. The tide happens on the beach, but we need to be deep within ourselves as men to be that desire for her, to be that calm, confident, grounded man that she wants within modern relationship. And that's why there are the other phases of coaching. I mean, today we're focusing on stop fucking up. And there are the other phases of grow, ask for what you want, how to ask for what you want, and then how to go deep. So that's a topic for another time.
Yeah, and we will cover those in the future. All right. Do you think now's a good time to reveal to the guys what we've been working on, let them know what's on the horizon?
Oh man, I'm so excited for our retreat coming up in March 2020. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, guys, Jeff and I have teamed up. We're going to be putting on a retreat in March from the 5th to the 8th. If you want to mark your calendar, this is going to be the Lead, Nurture, and Protect retreat. And we found a great place, I think, to have this. What did you think of it, Jeff?
Oh man, so we already booked an Airbnb in Phoenix, Arizona in March of 2020, and I looked up the average temperature is 77 degrees and sunny. We're gonna pull up to this palace of a men's like house. It's an 11-bedroom house. It's got a poker table, a billiards table, other games. I think there's Pac-Man there too, right?
Yeah.
And so the men that join us, which Dennis and I are going to do this regardless of how many men join us, but we do expect to have a lot of guys there. So we're going to shake hands with those guys, just like I do at other retreats that I've had, hug these men that we meet from around the country and around the world, and be ready for an amazing long weekend of learning how to be confident in ourselves, how to be great men in the world, both for us as men and for the women in our world, our family, and our communities. This is, we're going to talk about how to be more attracted to the special woman in our life. And Dennis, talk about the special pistol and firearms instructions we'll have.
So, yeah, the protection part, we're going to have 3 days on the gun range. We're going to make sure everyone has the basic skills, and then we're going to end up with some advanced training, and we're going to put more than 500 rounds down range this weekend. And just like with the gun, you need to practice to keep your skills up, whether it's in a relationship or if you're a concealed carry holder. If you've never practiced and use your weapon, you're not going to be able to be effective. So we're going to role play and practice at the retreat with relationship skills that you need moving forward. But we are looking at, making sure you also have the gun skills needed. Doesn't matter whether you're a concealed carry or even own a gun. We can make sure there's a gun to rent. It's going to be a blast. And honestly, you're right. The deposit's down. We're doing it. It's just a question of, what men are going to join us to have an amazing weekend. And we will go live with the registration first Monday in January next year, on January the 6th. And this is not going to be a huge, everyone can come. We're going to limit it to 10 because we're going to be doing some serious work here. We want to make sure we can connect and really go over and hit on the materials that we're going to cover.
Exactly. And yeah, it's not only going to be warm and we connect with men and know how to hit a bullseye in our relationship, if you will. We're going to make lifelong connections with the men that we meet there, which happens in every retreat that I've attended. I've visited men in Idaho, in Colorado, and in Sweden at this point. Other men I've met around the world in London, out east in Pennsylvania. All over the world, men connect and make these lifelong connections and friendships. Absolutely.
Well, and I was at a retreat with you last August, and I regularly stay in contact with those guys, and in fact was having a conversation with one of them last night. So yeah, this is something, it's going to change your life in a good way.
Yeah, we'll all fly home with a smile on our face, and we named it Lead, Nurture, and Protect because that's the covert contract that our wives and our women have that they don't even understand. So that's what we're going to dig in and nail out during the retreat, certainly.
All right. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast today. And we will cover the other stages of coaching in the future. And guys, thanks for listening. And like I said, we'll go live first Monday in January with registration, and we will see you all soon.
Loved it, Dennis. Thanks for having me, bud. Look forward to the next one.